Good morning. Welcome, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started this morning. Welcome to my friends online. We're just settling down here for a moment. And I'm going to start out and pray for us this morning. Oh, Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for bringing us here together in person, online, whenever anybody is watching this, Lord. I thank you for this time and this message that you have for us. Lord, I pray that you would be in this place, that you'd fill this place with your spirit, and that you would speak to each one of us this morning. Help us to hear what you want to say to us today. I pray that you would speak through Cassie and Blake, and that their message to us would be received well, and that would be directly from you. Thank you for this food. Thank you for all the mamas and the babies and the kids that are here or nearby in this room. Lord, I know that some of us are going through hard things. I just pray that you would give a moment of respite, that you would bring peace, that you would bring hope, and that you would bring help. And today and in your time. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, today we are starting a new topic. We're going to be with Cassie and Blake Anderson for the next 2 weeks, so today and next week, and we're talking about marriage, friends. So yay, marriage. It's good. It's really good. This is an important topic, I believe, and we always will come back to it at Real Moms at least once a year, every third semester or something. We will come back and talk about marriage because it's important. And to be honest, 100% honest with you about me, if I don't stop and think and be intentional about my marriage, then I could just keep on going and it'll be months before I even consider, oh yeah, how are we doing? So this is our chance today and next week to take a moment and pause. And I know some of you might be in hard places, and it's okay. We're going to treat each other with love and kindness and care today, no matter where you are in your marriage and in your relationship. And if you're not married, I know Cassie and Blake will have comments about that too. A lot of the things that they're going to say apply to other relationships as well. And so we're just praying over this day and this topic, that it's not uncomfortable or alienating, but instead could be just brought with love for everyone. So will you please join me in welcoming Cassie and Blake Anderson. Thanks for being here, friends. There's another microphone as well. It just needs to be turned on.
Okay. Oh, do that notes.
I told you I'd bring them.
I know.
Here we go. Hi. How are you guys? Good. Okay. This one was super fun to prepare for because I had to try to tie this guy down long enough to talk. But I want to just reiterate what Kara was saying.
It's not stable, so I was like, I'm not going to lean on it.
What we're talking about, honestly, can be for any relationship. About choosing your marriage, but it's choosing the people in your life. And, a little bit later on, when you go into your groups, there are questions for you to talk about. And one of the ways that we choose to love our spouse is in how we talk about them to other people and when they're not around. So I do want to encourage you that while things might be hard in your marriage or there are frustrations, because there always are things that your spouse doesn't do perfectly, I would want to encourage you to respect and love them as you talk about them. So I just want to do that caveat. Okay, so we're doing this for 2 weeks, and as I was sitting down and trying to think, I'm generally a short, sweet, to the point kind of person, and so trying to think through how I wanted to spread things out over the 2 weeks. One of the things that I know I connect with the most when I hear people speak is when I hear their story. And so this week, Blake and I are going to start by sharing our story. And we're actually going to start by sharing our family of origin stories. That sounds really fancy just for telling you about our families. That's how we grew up. And just because that will give you a little bit of an introduction into why we have had the struggles that we have had in our marriage. And then we'll talk to you a little bit about our own marriage so far. And then next week is when we'll kind of get into the technicalities of choosing each other and choosing to love each other. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to eat while Blake talks about his family of origin.
All right. Hi. So real quick, kind of brief background. I grew up in the missions field for the first kind of part of my life. I was born overseas and lived there till about 11. So kind of some of that missionary kid mentality of like, save everything, don't waste anything. I've got two brothers, so my mom, my dad were very like, frugal is not the right word, I would say. They were frugal, but you have to be. Like, overseas, my mom would wash Ziploc bags because you just run to the store and get them. So there's the mentality of, she still does that, but I think that's just because she can't get out of that habit. So there's like, I grew up a little bit of like waste not, right? It's not stuff that you can just run out and keep getting. I've grown a little bit out of that just because I've been back in the States so long. And also I'm like, that's a lot of work. I don't need to do that. So yeah, I've got two brothers, a twin brother and an older brother. We moved back to Indiana in '94. My mom and my dad, so I think they celebrated I'm really bad with dates. They celebrated a lot of They've celebrated, yeah, I think they're in their 40th something year of marriage. Very similar personalities they're both kind of,
they're both 9s on the Enneagram.
Thank you. So they're both 9s. We did not see them fight a lot growing up, ever. I think I saw some kind of like disagreements, but it was just really casual conversation. And so, I mean, obviously as brothers, we fought a lot, but my mom is not a very like hyper emotional person, all boys kind of thing. So we didn't kind of, I would say now I did not learn how to handle conflict well. Not that I handled it poorly. It was just like avoid it kind of philosophy. And that actually, you're eating, but I didn't know if you wanted to tell. That actually came up while we were dating. Let's
wait and talk about that when we get down to here.
Okay. You've got that. Okay. That's right. Yeah. So, she wrote what I'm supposed to say out. So, which is also a reflection of kind of our personalities. I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants. She writes everything out. So came back to the States, when, '94, I was about 11. Parents, kind of love my parents, still have a really good relationship with my parents. Obviously, the high school phase was a little like, I wanted to go off and do my own thing. Grew up in a really strong Christian household. Actually been at Grace for a very long time, so kind of grew up at Grace. As a result, I think part of me wanted to kind of experience a little bit of the rebellion, but I think my parents had instilled enough to know that I would love to have gone out and done like all the things that everybody else seemed like was having a lot of fun, but I also knew that it was wrong. And so actually, I would say I was probably headed in that direction when I met you, was like trying to get out and kind of do my own thing. And then I met Cassie, and I just couldn't get her out of my head. Oh. And so we kind of, let's see, I'm jumping ahead. I know, but it's
family part.
Family part.
How did you guys show affection?
How do we show affection? So we were not a lot of huggers. I mean, we weren't like, we didn't, and I married Cassie. Like, we weren't like completely standoffish, but my mom's not like a touchy-feely kind of personality. Neither's my dad. So my struggle, and I know I'm jumping ahead, but my love language is physical touch. So that was a very interesting kind of melding as I grew up and then as I married Cassie. Look at that timing. And
Stop jumping ahead. Okay. I'm sorry. Hold on. Okay, so I have a very, 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 very different family of origin from Blake. And some of you are familiar with it because of things that I have talked about in past years, but there's quite a few of you that are new here, so pardon me. I'm an only child, and I am an only child. Growing up, my dad was a pastor, but so he also was an alcoholic and very emotionally abusive. And so that is the house I grew up in. And my parents split for the first time when I was 14 or 15, and I stepped into the caregiver role for my mom because my mom is very codependent, like textbook codependent person. Parents got back together, and things just continued to get really bad. Conflict in my house was never solved, always yelled about. There was always screaming, name calling. It was never, I did not learn how to not engage all of my emotion when fighting, because both of my parents, my dad was very angry all the time, and my mom then was very emotional. I was not actually close with my mom because she's a very closed off person, affectionately. And I can remember even like hurting myself when I was a kid to like get her attention, to get her love. I was very close with my dad, so then having him leave was incredibly difficult. And I currently, they're separated. I currently have no contact with my dad, and I have a lot of boundaries with my mom. So I did not learn a lot of healthy, one, relational skills, obviously, two, conflict resolution, or three, even how to show affection as a wife, because my mom did not show any. I don't ever remember my parents kissing or holding hands or snuggling or anything. And so that just wasn't a thing that I grew up knowing. Which, you think is gonna cause, you don't think that it's gonna cause a ton of issues. But when we met at 21, 22, I always said that getting married would be the biggest accomplishment of my life because I came from such a screwed up background. Like our first year of dating, let's see if that.
Is this the picture that you?
I showed you that last night.
Yeah. It's all right. You probably don't want to see this photo of me.
No, you do. Oh, look at that. Now it's on. Okay.
I think the key is she still married me after we were dating, and I look like that.
Yeah. So when I met him, he worked here at Grace.
That's my real hair.
That's his real hair. And he worked here at Grace, and he always wore toe socks with overalls and bandana. That
Look what marriage can do for you.
is the.
Just saying.
Okay, so we met, and I will say, during our first year of dating, we did a ton of work just for me to even be able to function in a relationship. But then, along came marriage, and yeah. Oh, wait, we're still going to talk about dating. Hold on. Let's go back to this picture. Okay, so Blake was talking about, we still both remember our first fight, our first big fight.
Yeah, so my parents, jump back, my parents, I never heard them raise their voice, even to us. So my dad never yelled.
And sadness and never. They're just very even keel people.
Yeah, he never got angry with us. I mean, we would get in trouble, but he would never so I don't know yelling or screaming or anger of any of that.
Mm-hmm.
I never felt it, heard it, don't know how to deal with it.
So we were celebrating 6 months of dating, and we went out to eat, and I don't remember what we were talking about, but I am a very passionate person when it comes to how I speak. I get engaged, and I gesticulate a lot, and we were talking, and I'm excited about something, and he's slowly shrinking back into himself.
We were at a nice restaurant. It was quiet. I remember.
Loud. But we were 22 maybe. And we're not 22 anymore. So we still very distinctly remember this. And he was so upset because he thought I was mad, and he thought I was basically it was our first fight because we didn't realize how the other person communicated. He was not used to a very passionate type of communicating, and I wasn't used to somebody who couldn't handle
I
me.
remember I know better now. I said, "Can you calm down?" I know. I know better now, but because she was getting really loud and kind of in the
was it?
restaurant, and I was like,
loud.
so loud for me,
For
right?
you.
Like, because I'm not used to any sort of like loud
Right.
noise or emotion, stuff like that. So
Right.
it was a very much interesting time.
So we still got married. Yay for us. And for me, like getting married I was so grateful to step away from being a Mallory, which was my previous last name. It was like, I was so happy to do that. And then, you get into that first year of marriage, and we both had expectations for what it would be like, and it did not meet those expectations for either one of us. And so,
And we even went through like the Before You Say I Do classes, and you go through like, hey, what kind of expectations? And I think it was, unfortunately, we're still like, oh, we're getting married, it'll be all right. Yeah, maybe we have these expectations, but
like
we'll
all the butterflies,
Yeah,
that's still like, and those are the things that within a few months, like those feelings and those emotions, those fade, because that's just what happens. That's what's supposed to happen. You can't stay in that blissful stage forever. There's not a lot of depth to that. So, and if you noticed, we come from very, very, very different family of origins. So how we handle conflict, like I would watch him like shrink into himself, and we would try to be discussing something, and it would take him years, it felt like, to actually say what he was trying to say, because he was like kind of
And words mean a lot to you.
Yeah.
And of course, I never learned how to handle my like anger or frustrations well. And so the way I did that was don't say anything, because you don't know what may or may not be the right thing to say. And so like I would just sit there really quiet, and then when she paused, it would be several minutes probably for me to think through, okay, here's what I want to say, but I don't want to say it like that. So I've got to like And that was a learning process. It took me a lot longer back in the early days.
Yeah, you're better now. And that's just kind of normal adjusting, obviously. So then, surprise, we had twins. Ha! And they were a complete surprise. The pregnancy was a surprise, and then there were two of them.
The pregnancy was, we were thinking of having kids.
We wanted
I got
to.
laid off, and we decided to
Not.
put that on pause.
But God didn't.
And yeah. So we were pregnant, and I didn't have a job.
Right. And living in the apartment above his parents' garage. So that's not stressful at all. And you know what? Honestly, I feel like that was just survival. It wasn't, we managed to do okay, and But then along came this guy. This is Cooper. And he's our third. And that, because we had 2 3-year-olds and a newborn, and that rocketed us into a really dark time in our marriage. And honestly, it was probably, I want to say 3-4 years. It was not a short stint. And we were talking last
That photo
night.
really doesn't lend itself to that dark time. I'm just looking at it.
Like, look at him. He was a cutie. And we were talking last night about what it was that made that time so incredibly difficult. And you look at the logistics of it. Yes, we had 3 kids, 3 and under. We moved into a fixer-upper during that time. Blake left a job without having another job. So there was a couple of months where we did not have a job, and that obviously brings lots of stress. But then, and I'm sure all of you understand, when you have young kids, they take so much of you, that we became incredibly self-centered. It was kind of out of survival, because you give so much that you just want a little bit for yourself. And it's totally understandable to feel that way, but it actually, brought us to the point where I knew we were together physically, like in the same house, but I wasn't sure that we would be able to stay married emotionally, if that makes sense. There were a lot of nights where like he would be asleep and I would just be downstairs crying because I just didn't know, I didn't want to be this disconnected, but I also did not know how to make it back. Because again, when you're not feeling it, how do you make it to that point where, you know, your marriage is healthy and successful again?
And I think we talked a little bit about how we were very focused on what we were doing. Like you ended up focusing on the kids. I ended up focusing on what I was doing career-wise and job-wise and moving and stuff like that. And the house took a lot of work. And so it was kind of like we had our own separate areas of focus. And in some ways that allowed us to not have to deal with this, because I could, well, if I wasn't feeling this, I'd just go work on the house, or I would go figure out job stuff, or I'd be gone during the day. And so it kind of was a like escape almost, like we didn't have to deal with it, but we knew we should.
Right. And next week is really where like we'll get down to the nitty gritty of choosing and how, you know, kind of how we came back to that and choosing each other and, you know, waking up every day. And, you know, true love, I don't believe is an emotion. It's a choice. And so we'll talk about that. But it was a really hard time. And I think a lot of times when you get married or you're in the, you know, middle of something, nobody tells you that it could be a year or 2 or 3, and you get really discouraged when it keeps going on and on and on, and you don't think that there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel. But I'm gonna so that is us within the last like 4 years. And so these are things just.
She helped me with the hugging. I helped her with the costumes.
Yeah. So
I brought her into my world of costumes.
When I married him, he came into the marriage with a costume bag.
It was a closet. They were hanging up.
Well, sure. So again, it was really hard to kind of figure out how to transition between weeks. This is like a weird, we're in a very dark place and it's awful. Okay, so go talk to your groups about your family of origin and like, how do you like, it just, this was I could not figure out how to transition from week to week. So pardon me, it's not going to be graceful, but.
I think some of that, like you talk about the family of origins and then moving into the dark times is, you know, you start to realize some of the way you grew up,
how it
helps and hurts those dark times. Like I know this, we didn't talk about this, but like my parents' bedroom was off limits. Like it was their sanctuary. It's theirs. Our bedroom's not that way. Our kids come in, and so like there was like this.
They don't like sleep with us because they're big and they kick us.
I don't know. Cooper came in last night.
Well, he was scared. So he snuggled for a little bit.
And he's your boy.
And he's my boy.
So like realizing some of that dark times, like when we were not connecting, it was hard for me because I never saw that happen to my parents. Like I don't remember, and I know it might have happened. I think that we've talked to them a couple times, and there was some harder times.
They have mentioned how they wish they had fought in front of you guys just to show you a better way to handle conflict, because none of the boys kind of.
Yeah, all 3 of us boys are not really emotional.
No,
I mean, none of us guys are emotional, and then that comes from my parents are both by nature not emotional, and we didn't see a lot of emotion, so we don't understand that.
I will say it was easier for me to check out during that time after Cooper was born because I half expected him to leave anyway, not Cooper, Blake, because of.
So some of your family of origin, you are the only one in your entire family going back 3 generations that's not been divorced.
Mm-hmm. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, everybody. So I come from an intensely long line of brokenness. And to break that cycle, I wish that people had spoken into my life about what I was bringing into the marriage from my family of origin and how I handled or didn't handle conflict. I didn't know that you could talk about things calmly. I didn't know that you could wait until you calm down a little bit and then talk. I'm like, let's get it talked out. Like, let's hash it out. Let's do it. I didn't realize that you didn't have to do that. I didn't know that like he would stay and not leave if I showed him all of my brokenness.
And that was hard at first because I remember we got into a couple fights where I actually had to go for a run to get my thoughts in order and calm down so that I could talk because I did not know how to talk with emotion.
Right.
So.
And it would kind of scare me a little
Yeah,
bit.
because as soon as I left, I mean, I remember the first time I did that, I came back to some very anxious energy because it was like, I thought you were leaving me. Like, I literally got up, went and got my running clothes on and kind of walked out without really saying much because I was like, I don't know how to handle this.
Right.
And I came back and you were like,
Right. So that fed into my anxiety and my emotion, which then, caused him to shut down even more. And had we gone through, again, our family of origin and kind of what they grew into us as we watched them, we might have known how to handle those things earlier in marriage a little bit better. Is there anything else?
no, I mean, I would say we talked about a lot of this before we got married, but it's just until you're in
different.
it, it's different. And then sometimes when you're in it, you forget about everything you talked about.
I don't think that we even in the middle of those times were like, oh, let's talk about where we came from and how this is affecting how we handle conflict and how we decide to raise our kids. And thankfully we're on the same page about that. But even like affection, my mom is not an affectionate person. I didn't learn that. And that was hard for us because touch is like his number one love language. It's my lowest.
And words are your number one, and it's my lowest.
So that's setting us up for lots of good things right there. But the reason we're like, I don't want to say harping, but like sticking so much on family of origin is because that is what you guys are going to kind of talk about today. And I also want you to talk about it with your spouse or significant other or even a friend. Again, you bring all of these skills into any relationship you have, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a significant other, whether it's a friendship, a working relationship. At work, if somebody was always like, hey, I need to talk to you, I immediately thought I was in trouble. And I immediately went into this, oh my gosh, fight or flight. But that's because of what I grew up with. And there's things I'm still like, we're in the middle of something right now with my mom that is bringing up a whole horde of issues from my past that I had not dealt with yet or didn't have the energy to deal with yet. And so I have become a little bit of a disaster lately.
And I had to step in with your dad too.
Yeah.
I mean, her dad's very manipulative for her, not for me. And so I actually ended up.
Because again, emotions, like things don't get to him.
Yeah, I was like, you can get mad at me, I don't care. And so I basically said, I'm the gateway, and
Yeah.
he got mad and cut everything off. So,
Yeah.
But that's where it's like helpful in the sense
That's
that
when
I could step in.
Our different family of origins is very helpful because he could handle that well. But I will say, we know how to have fun together, and we have learned how to balance each other out. And again, we're going to talk more about it next week and get a little bit more practical.
I get a lot of eye rolls from you sometimes.
That is absolutely true. But this is our family now. This was just a couple weeks ago. Our girls are almost 13, Haley and Addie, and our son Cooper is almost 10. And so because like you can't, I feel like we're not really ending on it
Positive note.
like a positive note or even a good, like, I just want to tell you that there is hope, because when I tell you we were in a dark spot, like I knew that we were not going to get divorced, but I literally thought I was going to be in a marriage where we didn't love each other for the rest of our lives. Like that's where I thought we were going to be, because we were so disconnected. But there is like, we are still working through it. We're still like every day.
And there was a lot of people that kind of came around us and helped us. We had mentors on your side, mentors on my side, that kind of, it wasn't just us kind of bucking up together,
Right.
which we might get into a little bit next week.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I want to say, like, there's surrounding yourself with people.
Yeah, community is huge. So as you go into your groups today, I encourage you to take it seriously, like thinking through how your family or how the people you grew up with handled conflict, showed affection, the positives and negatives of those relationships in your life, because they really did shape how you engage in your marriage and how you engage in relationships. And a lot of times, like, we honestly just don't think about that. I think I would have done a whole heck of a lot more counseling just on my own if I had realized how much at 24 that had impacted me, and it, probably would have saved us a little heartache in our marriage. But and then I would really love for you also to talk with your spouse about their family of origin, and it might clue you in on why they handle things the way that they do, and it might help you understand each other better, because that ultimately, looking at where your spouse is coming from, or your friend or your coworker, will help you understand and love them better. So, okay. It's a weird transition and I hate it, but that's the best I can do because we're going to continue next week. So, okay. Thank you guys.